I know the feeling of having the kids sleeping next to you, so no no worries at all. Welcome to the call. Um, all right, so everybody, we are live streaming on YouTube now. Welcome to PieDAO development call number 5. Unfortunately, we had a little hiccup with the POAP tokens today. We're not able to log in to create them. So Daniel, if you want to ping me in Discord, then as soon as I have a link for that, I'll send it to you. And in the meantime, why don't we just get started? So Daniel just let us know in chat that he is unable to introduce himself due to a sleeping daughter next to him, but he's from dfire.io. We're very happy to have you on the call this week. And any insight, feel free to just drop into the chat. We also have Travis, who's a long time, or I guess long time in the context of this project and these calls, developer, bounty, friend of the team. So welcome back, Gab and Mick, who are both core team members with myself. So without any further ado, I'll get started. On the agenda today, we have the Pools app Svelte update, balancer token generation updates, and the smart contract work updates. So as of the last call, we had been talking about beginning work on pools.piedao.org, building a Svelte app. That is going well. Unfortunately, got interrupted a couple days into work by the launch of the balancer farming rewards, which really just kind of ate my entire week last week and weekend before that. Getting ready, had to ingest a whole ton of data and all sorts of fun things like that. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But the app is going well, and we will be doing much more work on that as we move forward with this week. And into next week, I hope on development call number 6, I will have something to demo and a bunch of good updates on that. So I think I mentioned in a previous call that we were targeting a July 15th launch. Obviously, at this point, that is not feasible. I think we've adjusted ourselves to the end of July. We've also had some hiccups in the smart contract work that we were supposed to or looking to have in audit at the beginning of last week. We had to go through a rather large refactor, which Mick will talk about in a little bit as well. And so we're hoping to now have that into audit by the beginning or middle of next week, rather than the beginning of last week. And part of that is Mick had a nice week-long vacation and break, and he put in a valiant effort trying to get this thing done before that, but it was just too big of a lift to actually hand it off to the auditors. So what we did not do in the results of last week that we had, or 2 weeks ago rather, the completion of parity with the balancer pool, we did not quite complete that. As I mentioned, Mick's going to talk more about that. And that was primarily because of those refactors that we had to do. We did get all of Travis's changes and stories merged in, and Travis is now a proud DOE holder. He is the first and only one to receive a development bounty so far. So that's really awesome. And we're happy to have you in the voting public, Travis. And so, yeah, that's it for the pools update and the general updates of last week. So with Balancer, we kind of got a little surprised. We had been told right around the last call that the Balancer tokens were going to be released within a week or so, and they wound up getting released the very next day. So that kind of threw us off. Balancer was nice enough to run the first set of numbers for week 1, 2, and 3 for BTC++, but they did not run USD++ numbers, and they also did not run any numbers for the various pools that were involved in holding BTC++ or USD++, for instance, the Uniswap ETH pool on Uniswap V1. So we had to do a lot of work to get ready for that. We, at the time, did not have an archive node. We also did not have any sort of database of transactional history, or really a script that was functional for actually determining the balance of the other pools as the provisional script that Balancer gave us hard-coded the account addresses to actually be looked at. So we forked the repository and that they had for Val mining scripts and built a think something like now 40 gigabyte database of transactions from the entire block history from week 1 all the way up until the end of week 4, which was released on Wednesday. And we then did a bunch of processing of that data in order to determine account balances. If anyone's interested in looking at how we're doing all of that, you know, obviously you would first have to build a database of all of the blocks and all of the transactions that have happened since the original week 1 opening block. So that would take some time. But once you did that, if you had an archive node, you would be able to actually run this. Thankfully, I've been doing some work with archivenode.io. Really cool project looking to create archive node access for early stage projects for free. DeFi Dude and Mystic Rinian, got a really nice guy named Chase, are leading that project. And I've donated a couple of nodes now. So halfway through the process, we were able to switch over to using one of the nodes that we stood up there, and that sped up the process drastically. I think the difference in time of calculating account balances for BTC++ dropped from about an hour and 20 minutes to roughly 5 minutes by switching from Infura to the direct WebSocket connection to the archive node that we set up. So that was really great. Basically, to give a brief run through of how this happens, we pull in all of the blocks and add them to a database, and that runs through this very simple block importer, which literally just grabs all of the blocks with their transactional data and then stores that to the database from a starting block to an ending block. So Balancer, you might or may not be aware, only calculates every 64 blocks because we want to be able to detect all of the account holders across time. We actually pull in all of the blocks. So that's the first step. Then we go ahead and run a balance fetcher script, which looks at that database, does some really intense query calculation or queries to pull out all of the block IDs and block numbers that a transaction involving any of the pools we care about took place, and then runs through and looks at the each account holder's balance at that particular block. And so it runs through every single block that we care about, looks for that balance, builds up a database of those balances over time. And then we do this nice little sanity check, which basically runs through those balances, compares them to the total supply of each of the tokens that we're looking at to make sure that that matches up. If it doesn't match up, we then need to go through a manual check of the block number where we have a failure. So we look at Etherscan and we look at the transactions that have taken place on that contract. We try to find the transaction that's missing, and then we manually add whatever account is missing and the transaction to the database so that we then check the balances correctly on the next run. Once that happens, we then do a contract detector script, which looks at all of the smart contracts that might be included in these accounts that we're looking at. And that outputs this nice little smart contracts JSON file here, which gives us all of those addresses that have interacted with the pools over the week or 4 weeks that we're looking at. And then we parse that against all of the ones that should receive rewards in order to determine which smart pools we should not directly send to. Once we determine that, then we need to run account balances and all the checks for those smart pools, which you can see all of those here, and so that we disperse correctly. Once we have the totals, and those files are really kind of crazy, they look like this for every 64 blocks between. It calculates how much rewards out of the total rewards should be distributed to each address that had ever held BTC++ or whatever the token is. And then we run a totaling script, which totals that up into this file, which shows all of the rewards that each address should receive for the entire week for that pool. And then we run another totaling script, which looks at all of those totals across all of the pools and combines those. And that's how we get the final distribution numbers for all of the pools that are involved and get as accurate as possible. These do wind up dropping, these calculations wind up dropping off a little bit of dust. So at the end of this process, we're left with, you know, maybe 1/100th of a penny worth of BAL still in the receiving contract, but otherwise we're not currently taking any sort of fee to do this. I believe that we're going to be making some changes to the overall plan here. This is obviously a non-trivial amount of time for the team and costs the DAO quite a bit of money to run. To give you some context, the archive node costs $250 a month. We also have a server with 256 gigs of RAM, which runs the database that currently I'm paying for myself. That you know, allows all of the data for the Postgres database to exist in DDR4 RAM directly, so these calculations can run fairly quickly. And so it's a very non-trivial task. Also, each one of these smart pools that we add, every time we add it, we have to run the script differently with different block numbers, because obviously you can't calculate totals for blocks where the smart contract didn't even exist. So that adds a bunch of time. So each new smart contract pool that we add adds roughly half an hour to the processing of the block times and the block rewards the first week that it's done, and then adds maybe 5 or 10 minutes each week after that. So I know that there is currently a proposal up to limit the number of pools that we consider to be rewardable, and that is up with a vote as well, which you can go to the DAO Aragon site and go ahead and vote on that if you happen to have some dough. So right now we're considering only allowing rewards across 5 of the pools that are currently holding BTC++ or USD++, partially because we want to limit the amount of effort that we're taking, partially because a lot of those dozen or so pools that we're spending half an hour and then 10 minutes every week on only get maybe $1 or $2 worth of BAL rewards total anyway. So it's really not worth the time and the effort to actually do that. We're much better spending the time on forward progress. So I'm happy to talk more about this with anyone individually or in Discord. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube later, feel free to hop into the development channel or into the governance channel and governance discussion channel to talk about any of this stuff. If you want to look at the code, you want to look at the actual numbers that are being output, then you can go to PieDAO/BAL mining scripts. You can take a look at the PieDAO branch. Please be aware that there is a lot of code that's not used in here because we did just fork this. Also, this README is very not right. So this was a very quick, as fast as possible approach that we took. I would imagine after we finish the new pools website and some of that other work, we'll create a slightly nicer, maybe more automated version of this. But for now, we really just wanted to make sure that we could get that balancer, the balancer rewards out to our holders as quickly as possible. We were a little afraid that people were going to show up with pitchforks and torches if we took more than an extra week to actually disperse. I think Travis probably would have been leading that crowd. Thankfully, we're on the other side of that this week when the rewards are dispersed. I believe what will be 2 a.m. tonight or tomorrow for me, since they disperse that at very late at night Eastern time. We will run those scripts the very next morning and send out the rewards very shortly after that. So that's all I've got on balancer token generation updates. I hope not to have to spend too much time on that in the future or talk too much about that in the future. But if you're interested in how that's working, that's a medium deep dive on how we're actually running everything and what goes into the infrastructure and effort behind it. That was overall probably about 70 hours of development work and importing work that I had to do in order to actually produce those results the first time through. So cool. Mick, you want to take over now and talk about the smart contract work?
Yeah, sure. So we were planning on going to audit last week on Monday, but the week before we noticed that we're pushing the smart contract size over the limit. We were already pretty close, but we were going over. So we had to refactor, which is always fun. Actually, it was bound to be done at some point anyway, so it was not that big of a deal. So I can maybe show a bit of the structure how it is now. Yeah, this works. Okay, and so basically we split out all the functionality into a bunch of libraries, which you can see here. So to keep all functionality separated. So there's like a library for exiting the pool and one for entering the pool and all of that good stuff. We separated the storage in some separated contracts or libraries actually. And then inside of the smart pools, we just call the library functions. And if you use external libraries in Solidity, you deploy them separately so they don't add up to the total contract size. So now we have that limit out of the way, which is great. And other than that, I've been, as you might see here, I've been working on functionality to add and remove tokens, and also Travis's single asset entry and exit will be in there. So it was a bunch of work, but it's actually like the tests are passing. I just need to change the deployment scripts to work with this new stuff. And then by the end of the week, it should all be finished. So that's great.
Hey, Mick, are you just updating the existing deployment scripts, or are you switching to the new deploy stuff at the same time?
I'm updating it, but I might switch to the new stuff. But yeah, I might switch to the new stuff.
It's not that difficult to set up. I don't think it would be that terribly hard to switch. And it's definitely with the snapshots and all the other stuff that it adds. And you now can get hot reloading too in your contracts through it, which is pretty nice.
That's pretty cool. Now, like in a local environment, you can get hot reloading. That's cool. Does it keep the state when hot reloading? Or no?
I'm not 100% sure.
Because that would be even more amazing.
Yeah. It uses some kind of proxy deployment of the contract to implement hot reloading. I do know that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's fun. And yeah, just a bunch of upgrades coming up. Separated everything in different contracts. Should be a bit more readable now. Or not, depending how you look at it. So yeah, I'm excited about that. There's not much I can say about it. It's a refactor. Everything is organized differently now, and we have virtually no limit on the size of contract anymore because it's all in separated libraries. So.
Yeah, I'm going through the same issue with PieDAO right now, and I actually already put my stuff in libraries, but I'm still having issues. It might be because my libraries aren't external. I'm gonna have to check that now.
Yeah, functions need to be external. If they're internal, they get embedded.
Got you. That might be what's going on. Then I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and also there's no linking in Biddler, so you need to write some code to be able to actually link to be linking stuff, which I've done here. So you basically replace the address.
All that goes away if you go to Biddler deploy. Like
Yeah.
all that will go away, because what ends up happening is when it deploys, it regenerates your artifacts, and you can call on your deployments to get the artifact. Like, you don't need the artifacts at all. You never have to interact with them, because Biddler deploy gives you access to your deployments directly, and so you can just instantiate the contract you need, and off you go. It's freaking sweet.
You know what would be really awesome, maybe on the next call, would be like a deep dive on Builder Deploy.
Yeah,
Maybe you
it would
guys
clean up a
could.
lot of your deployment scripts. I looked through them and I was like, wow, this, because that's what ours looked like at Market Protocol. They looked absolutely insane. And when I started doing PieDAO, Biddler Deploy had just came out, so I immediately started using it. The new version is much better, and I just did the upgrade. Just a lot cleaner in syntax and your configs and stuff. A lot of changes around that, and then also the added features of hot reloading and the new stuff. But what it did was, I don't even have to fool with artifacts, and it gives me access to my deployments and tests. So all I have to do is it gives you you can just import your deployments, and from deployments you can get every contract you need.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I looked at the deployment stuff, but I saw in the GitHub repository that the actual the linking of libraries was commented out. So I thought that maybe it was not working, but maybe they upgraded it now. Or
I don't seem to be having an issue. Mine seem to deploy. I haven't had to do anything special with linking using it. So
yeah, but you're using internal libraries, right?
I'll let you know today.
Yeah.
I'll let you know on the details on. I got one open right here. What are my functions? Yeah, I am using internals. Let me switch everything over to, and that's probably why I wasn't getting the results with my refactors that I thought. Let me switch all my functions to external today, and I'll let you know for sure on that.
Awesome. Cool. Okay.
Well, great. So, I'll go ahead and take over sharing again here. So for next week, we really have a goal here of a demo-ready version of pools.piedao.org and a completion of the smart contract refactor. Anything else you guys want to add as the to-do, the goal for next call? Nope. Okay, cool.
I don't have any to-dos left. I had finished all of the tickets that I was approved for. So
awesome. Awesome. Well, we appreciate the work.
Yeah, no problem. Got anything else? Happy to.
Yeah. Your bounty reward, yes, right?
Yeah, I finished. No, I got a Trezor, so I can now interact with the DAO. I bought it, so I'm good there. I was able to request all my tokens, and they are already paid out.
Oh, great.
Very cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining. Like I said, the POAP token for this week is delayed, but I'll get that out to you as soon as I have that from the team.
Are they actually worth anything? Because I've never actually claimed mine. I've just been like, those seem completely pointless to me.
Yeah, so actually we will use them at some point for some sort of reputational system, most likely, but cool. Also they are now being included with ETH Global. POAP is talking about doing some sort of discount program or something like that. So it's very likely in future conferences and things like that will be discounted based on holding PieDAO POAP tokens. Potentially. That's not confirmed yet, but cool. There are a number of really cool things that are in the works. So other than just being, bragging rights, they are definitely going to have potential value at some point in the future. But you can hold on to those links too and claim them once gas prices are lower.
I'm not really
You
holding
don't have
out
to claim
hope
it
on.
right away.
I'm not really holding out any hope on being able to attend ETH Global events anytime soon. We're pretty much banned from traveling anywhere. We don't live in a civilized world like you, Dan.
Yeah, I know. You gotta come to Europe and stay next time you have a chance to actually leave the country.
Jeez.
So in the next decade or so, whenever that first happens, hopefully it'll be sooner than that. I kind of want to see my parents again, sometime in the next several years. But my family all lives over there. I got a 95-year-old grandmother I'd like to see again, stuff like that. But
it's kind of crazy. But
I'm certainly not coming back and then dealing with a 2-week quarantine on both sides, plus risking getting it. We only have 12, I think 12 cases or something like that.
I mean, Vermont
now.
is the only, Vermont. We've had zero, bro. Like been having zeros.
Oh,
Vermont is the
13. We're
only,
up by 1 now.
yeah, Vermont is the only. I'm nervous though. July 4th weekend, I saw so many tourists. I'm a little annoyed, but we've been having. I mean, it's as good as it's going to be here in Vermont.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream now. We'll